there is no question that there were a lot of things that you said. There were things that obviously Ed Schultz said. Heck, there were even things that Tom Hartman said, when you were on RT, especially during the 2016 election, where they realized that they couldn't control the narrative anymore. So the only way to deal with it is to censor people. And we're seeing just how devastating censorship has become in this country. But I wonder, from your perspective, why do you think so many liberals are so accepting of censorship? Like, it's absolutely incredible how they're really willing to just, disregard what Ben Franklin said regarding liberty and security, that if you're willing to give up liberty for security, you are not entitled to either one. And that seems to be becoming more and more of a prophecy today as we go about the current political environment that we're living in.
Well, they have largely successfully done the old the chess move, or the old move of accusing your rivals of what you're doing. So they realized after 2016, really, I mean, that was the moment where they were like, this has gotten out of hand. Bernie Sanders nearly, despite all of our rigging, nearly won the nomination, and Trump won the presidency. And they said, we got to stop this. This is too much freedom of information. And so they accused everybody and anything that was outside of the Overton window of being misinformation, and therefore it allowed endless censorship. So as they put forward tsunamis of propaganda, they say, oh, you're misinformation and you're lying. And we now have seen Russiagate. It's amazing that it still continues to happen week to week right now, but we've seen it all collapse over, these 6 years of garbage we had to listen to. And so they accused the other side or whatever they didn't want on those airwaves to be misinformation. And then they censored it all. And they've been impressively successful at a lot of it. I'm at the same number of Facebook followers that I was at the end of the 2016 election. They froze it basically at that moment. 330,000, never gone up again. And you mentioned Ed Schultz and some of the others. Many of them were at RT or had been banned and were not at RT, but just had been banned from other networks for that exact kind of speech. I mean, Ed Schultz he told me the story. I didn't know this. He was at Bernie Sanders' house where Bernie Sanders was announcing his run for the presidency, the first run. And it was not that big a story, right? But Ed Schultz supported him and went to the house and got the approval, obviously, of MSNBC to cover all the travel and everything. So he's there and it's 5 minutes to air. And he gets the call from the president of MSNBC that they're not going to air it. And so they've shipped Ed Schultz and his crew and everything to Bernie Sanders' house. But they had already realized at that point that they needed to suppress Sanders. And then eventually they get rid of Ed Schultz altogether. He ends up at RT America. Chris Hedges kicked out of New York Times for being against the Iraq War. He ends up at RT America. Rick Sanchez pushed out for similar reasons. He ends up at RT America. So a lot of us found the one place that would let us speak freely. And now it's all gone, obviously.
Yeah, I find that interesting. I can't see the difference between what we're living and what is the ministry of truth. Like, I'm really not sure that there is any sort of difference between what we're getting. You have media that doesn't do reporting anymore, that is really what is the mainstream of what people have access to as far as news. They don't do reporting. They're literally given whatever they're given from the State Department, whatever talking head said, this is what you're going to say today. And so once we no longer had reporters reporting, that was the end. Like, even in the Dan Rather era, and I wasn't like I'm a big Dan Rather fan, but even you had those guys actually were reporters. They actually were reporters, were in the field, whatever. So, that's gone.
And they a lot of them, maybe the majority of them knew what to say to be allowed on those networks. However, there were exceptions. There were the Seymour Hirsches. There were the people that ultimately, under pressure, wrote about Ellsberg's Pentagon revelations. And there were the Robert Shears. And there were these exceptions that revealed all these amazing stories and changed the world, changed the nation. And now those have all been purged. I mean, those two are some good examples. Robert Shear, after 30 years at LA Times, is pushed out. Seymour Hersh pushed out despite being one of the most legendary reporters America has. And now our mainstream media won't even cover his revelations about the Nord Stream pipeline. We have gotten to a place where the truth is absolutely an anathema to the empire's games, and they're in a scared place. So they're shutting it all down, and it really is disgusting to see, and people have to stand up against it. And one of the grossest things is the fact that media, the mainstream media, they don't even stand up for the censoring of their colleagues.
No, because they're not colleagues.
Yeah. They're not really colleagues.
So, like, they're not colleagues of Julian Assange.
Right.
Those are not colleagues of him. Those are talking heads, so they are only loyal to capital, right? Like, I mean, they don't care about, they're not seeking truth.
It's funny. It's funny. Jen and I were talking earlier today about Chris Hedges and how, he easily could have been Jim Acosta if he really wanted to be. But being a journalist, a real journalist, was more important to him than anything else. And I think the whole idea of, Dr. Cornel West running for president is that he's going to say things that need to be said that a lot of people are going to have a very hard time hearing. And the smear campaign, the censorship campaign, they are not even allowing this thing to get air. They are hell-bent on making sure that he is silenced, and quickly. Mm-hmm. How do you see this unfolding? Because to me, he could basically run a barn burner campaign through every college campus across this country. And he's going to be, is he going to be viable to actually win this whole thing? No, but could he actually create enough momentum where the two-party system really gets shaken to its core and people feel comfortable in moving in another direction? Yeah, I think that's very possible this time around, because I think the numbers are bearing it out that people are tired of this shit.
Yeah, those are all good points. And he is a beloved person who speaks the truth, and he speaks the truth in front of the powerful, even as they stare. And he's got a brilliant way of doing it, calling them all my brother and my sister, and they somehow don't realize that he's just undermined the core of their ridiculous belief systems. Yeah. But so he's phenomenal at doing it. But he was on the DNC's platform committee and stood in front of all of them and somehow told them all that they were immoral for not being able to speak at all about Israel and about the apartheid state there. And he made them look like idiots, but he's willing to say these things in front of the people that have the power to decide whether he's on the next committee, whether he's in the next thing. He's not going to back down. And so, yeah, I'm very impressed with Cornel West, and there's very little that he's ever said that I disagree with.
Yeah. I mean, look, there have definitely been some things we've talked about over the past week regarding his willingness to run with the People's Party, questions about whether or not it even is a party. We know they don't have ballot access, like certain things. I mean, there was a sort of video released of Chris Hedges mentioning at a Worker Strike Back event that he had set up a meeting between the Green Party and Cornel. And, hopefully that comes to something, because that's obviously a lot more of a viable situation. But I feel the same way. I feel like, yeah, there's flaws there, because there's flaws with everybody. But I can't think of a better person to stir the shit up. And honestly, that's all you're going to get from a third party run at this point. That's all you're going to get but the question is, how much shit can they stir up? It's the degree of it. Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, if you run in the Democratic Party, then again, you can stir up a lot of shit, but you, at the end of the day, you are running for, if you stand for the stuff you and I are talking about, you're running for a revolution in an anti-revolutionary party, and they're going to do everything to crush you. Now, they're going to do everything they can to crush third parties as well. However, you are not in their system. I mean, DNC lawyers have said in court that they are entitled to rig the primary. So you're not running in that system. Now, like you said, they've still done everything they can to rig the third parties out of it as well. Matthew Ho ran as a Green Party candidate in North Carolina recently, and despite getting over the number of signatures, they then threw them all out. Ultimately, a court decided that they're not allowed to throw them all out, and he still was able to run. But that is the type of shit that you're up against. Is you get all the signatures, you do all the things, you check all the boxes, and then they say, oh yeah, we just remembered, we set fire to all those signatures. It is a ridiculous system, but I agree that whether Cornel can win the presidency or not, I think is less important at this point than whether he can get everybody active on these issues, get everybody talking about them, move the Overton window, move the ideas, push the ideas, and, light a fire in people.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.